Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Fraternity Foodie. My name is Mike Eilon with Greek University. There is nothing like food that brings people together, so we're going to tackle some of the really tough conversations in all of these interviews, and we're also going to get the inside scoop on what our guests like to eat and where we can go to get it. So stay tuned at the end. You're going to find out for our guest today. And our guest today is Corbin Franklin. Corbin is a good friend of mine and a fraternity brother. We've known each other for many, many years. He's a residence hall director at Sam Houston State University. And as I said, we go way back. Corbin actually saw me speak for the first time at Southern Arkansas when he was the IFC president. And he was an undergraduate, of course, at the time. And immediately, I knew that he was somebody special. Immediately, he struck me as somebody who was going to be in higher education in some capacity, working with students, I think, for his entire career. So I'm really excited about that. Welcome, Corbin. Thanks for being on our show.
Hello. Glad to be here. It's a great opportunity to be doing this with you.
Excellent. I appreciate that. So let's get right into it. Of course, you were a member of Sigma Pi at Southern Arkansas University. And I remember when I was there on campus and I was speaking, I remember new buildings were going up just about everywhere I looked. They're growing by leaps and bounds. I went on the website. I saw that they've had 4 years of increasing enrollment over at Southern Arkansas. So why do you think so many students are enrolling at Southern Arkansas?
Well, I think it's a couple of different things. Geographically, it's in a really good spot. There's some schools in the area like LSUS or A&M Texarkana, but other than that, you've got to go to Euler or University of Arkansas, which is quite a ways, and it's a lot more expensive. So it's a great spot for the quality education that they're providing with wide range of degree programs to cater to each student. And also the administration works very hard to foster partnerships outside of the university to offer unique experiences for the students. And this started way back when Dr. Rankin, years ago, whenever he took the presidency, worked really hard to start those types of expansions and things like that. And now Dr. Berry works extremely hard to make sure that the surrounding corporations and businesses have their hand in the pot, so they have a chance to mold the next group of students coming in. And lastly, the culture of caring. This is something that they've been boosting for quite some time now. I think they started this out right when I was leaving. It really makes the student matter. There are very few places that you can go and email the president and typically get a meeting the same day or really at all. And that's something that you can do at Southern Arkansas University. And they're very, very intentional about what they do and how they interact with students. And they're really good about capturing their story and their culture and recruiting students based on that. And when I finished community college, that's what got me, is the choice was clear. It was home. So I think that's what a lot of students are seeing, is that that's their new home.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Very, very nice. A lot of things to chew on there in terms of what I'm seeing at universities across the country, which schools have increasing enrollment, which ones are kind of struggling, and maybe what some of those struggling schools might want to look at. And that seems like a great model. Of course, you were a very involved student there and a fraternity man. What was it like being in a fraternity at Southern Arkansas?
Well, it certainly had its positives and drawbacks. Participation in events was kind of tough because members, whether had competing interests, whether that was class, another organization, or work, membership in each of the IFC fraternities hovered around 25 to 30 students, and mostly everyone was involved in 2 to 3 organizations or campus jobs or really any number of things. But it was great for our members to be involved in so much, but it was also very difficult for participation. But it was also great for opportunities to build skill sets, because most of the amount of work that needed to be done, if you wanted those skills, they were there to take. Fortunately enough for me, I took advantage of those opportunities. But those things aside, I was able to generate some great lasting relationships with brothers and those that I worked with in IFC and the IGC. Regardless of the organization membership, all of Greek life was relatively close. We all shared the same classrooms and meeting spaces. We didn't have any houses, and they still don't. I'm not sure if they're looking to bring those on, but in some cases, we fraternities and sororities hung out with more people that were not of their own fraternities or sororities, which made it easier when it came to collaborating with IFC and IGC levels.
Yeah, I did notice a lot of that collaboration, which I think is unusual. I go and I travel and visit with various Greek systems around the country, and many of them are operating in silos. They're only hanging out with members in their own organization. If they're in an IFC organization, they're not going to hang out with somebody who is in another council, for example. They might not even know people in other councils. So that did strike me. What is it about the environment that offers that ability for you to reach out and be close to people in other organizations there?
Well, it really has to do with the amount of work that needs to get done. The professional staff are really stretched thin, especially with being a smaller university. So that offers a great opportunity for us as student leaders to be able to kind of take up some of that slack. And when big things happen or big jobs come up, that's really all we can do. It's really seeing a job and making sure it gets done and getting done correctly.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were the president of the IFC, and I know that sometimes as a student, leading is difficult. There's all kinds of pressures on you. Talk to us a little bit about that. What was difficult about serving as president of the IFC?
So, as I've talked about with being in a fraternity and having so many people and not a lot of time to do things, I think that had a lot to do with it, as well as resources. Like I said, staff were generally pretty well stretched, and it left the student leaders to pick up that. I think that this is something that's happening across the nation, though. As the Syracuse summary came out with their findings, I think that's the first thing that came out is we have less resources, but we have to do more with less. And there was always a little bit of pushback on the validity of the IFC at our campus because we were so small and folks didn't think that was actually even relevant. But it was a great use, especially in regard to collaborative efforts for philanthropy and community service and making sure that those organizations are held accountable for what they say they're doing. But really, I think the difficulty came from being able to juggle taking classes, on-campus employment, being a resident advisor, and making sure that I'm involved enough with my own fraternity, as well as being IFC president. There's also a quote that sums up my time at SAU pretty well. It comes from a man named Scott Lane that I heard when I was in high school. The more you give, the more you get. The more you get, the more you have to give. And once folks know that you're willing to do the work and do good work, it seems that you're the only one they call. And this isn't a bad thing. It certainly will keep you busy, but and you'll get a ton of experience.
Excellent quote. Excellent answer. So you've now made the jump, and now you're in residence halls, right? You're the residence hall director at Sam Houston State. Do you miss working with Greek life now?
I think that's a pretty tough question because Greek life gave me the burning desire to be in higher ed. And once I got into my master's program and now that I've graduated, I think my interests have changed a little bit. I think I want to gear more towards research and assessment. I know there's a ton of research that needs to be done in FSL, but really there's not a whole lot of research being done in learning outside of the classroom, especially in residential communities. And I'd really like to build on that. But I think the biggest thing that I miss is the shared understanding of being a part of an organization that's bigger than the individual, regardless of what letter organization. Sure, there are non-fraternity and sorority organizations, but it's really just different. It's really kind of hard to explain, but those of us that are in fraternities and sororities really understand that. We know it. It's the camaraderie. I mean, there's parts of rituals that that look the same in every fraternity or sorority, but they have different meanings. So it's kind of bringing those things together and really understanding that we can all come together and do something better and greater for the people around us.
Very nice. So now you're living in Texas. Is there anything that you miss from Arkansas that you can't get in Texas now?
Well, truth be told, I'm actually from Texas, so
Ah,
thankfully enough, no hate to Arkansas. It's a wonderful place, beautiful country, but I think probably the biggest thing that I miss is Mixer James in Magnolia. It was never because the food was really that great or anything like that, but it was really just the experience, either early mornings or late nights. And you could really always count on Mr. James being open and to get a warm plate of gravy and biscuits. You can't beat it.
excellent. Very good. So now in your new role, you're responsible for student conduct and also for crisis management as well. So what types of issues are you seeing on today's college campuses in terms of the student conduct issues and crisis management?
So obviously mental health is always going to be a concern, especially with new students coming in and this being their first time away from home, and really seeing some of the normlessness, so to speak. And what is really great about Sam Houston State is we have a terrific crisis management team that's ready at the drop of a hat to help in those instances and really give the student the resources that they need. And making sure that they feel welcome and safe in their environment. Um, and also, I think the biggest thing that I see more than even mental health is students are coming to us unprepared to communicate effectively, and they're scared of confrontation. And most would rather avoid the interaction altogether, and it sometimes gets them in trouble, whether that's with professional staff or those around them. So it's really working hard to make sure that students know about the resources around them and making sure that you're fostering an environment that is conducive to that unpreparedness. And like I said, unaware of the resources they actually have on campus. And this is going to differ everywhere. But for here, I know that I'm a part of the Student Health Advisory Committee, and there's not a whole lot of students that understand that we have a fully operational clinic on campus. They just think, oh, it's on campus, so it's subpar. I'm just going to go home and do whatever else. But we can treat minor routine illnesses and minor injuries, and really it's about getting that information out and making sure that we're doing our part of formulating the student learning outcomes so that they're getting that information and assessing those things as well.
hmm It's great that you have those resources available on campus. And you're right, a lot of it is just educating the students in terms of what's available to them. But you take mental health as an example. When I was executive director of Sigma Pi, I was seeing the number of mental health issues every single year was climbing. It was growing. It was a growing issue, and it's not something that traditionally we were ever talking about, especially within a male organization. It's just not something that guys typically will talk about. Even today, I think it's one of those issues where if I were to go onto Facebook and just post something saying that, hey, I'm having a really difficult time right now, it'd be interesting to see what kind of responses I would get from my own fraternity brothers today.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to see that you have those resources in place, and that we're starting to talk about it and deal with it a little bit more effectively than maybe in years past.
Absolutely, and I think society is stepping up to plate on that too, and making sure that we're seeing those warning signs and making sure that folks are getting the help that they need.
Yeah, that's really good. So now you're a supervisor. You're supervising a team of 10 resident advisors. And that must be, I think, both challenging and also rewarding in many different ways at the same time. So, how has your experience been working as a team leader?
So the times that make me want to pull my hair out and things like that, at this point, definitely don't outweigh the great gratification that I get from seeing a student um, just have it click and it understands them, especially in their student leadership position. Um, So I think the biggest thing for me is really understanding and seeing the student team dynamics and making sure that I'm plugging in the folks that we need and utilizing their skills optimally, and building up the skills that they don't have mastered just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that becomes increasingly difficult when students leave for graduation, internships, or any number of things, leaving school or whatever else. But it becomes another opportunity, right? So it's the same thing whenever you're a student leader, is you're trying to take the skills that other students have and plugging them in to create this efficient and effective team. And that's the awesomest thing on the planet, is being able to do that and have a team that can get things done. And it's truly special to see those things happen, and making sure that our residents know they have folks around them that are going to get things done, and ultimately have a friend around to progress them through their journey.
Very nice. So I know that you're keeping up on all the news stories around the country on fraternities and sororities. So in your opinion, what should students in these organizations be doing differently in order to continue to grow their organizations and also stay relevant?
Absolutely. So it starts with recruitment always. Whenever you have the recruitment and it's going very well, you're able to create a new norm. You're able to restart that social reproduction, so to speak. So if fraternity and sororities are able to leverage their values through intentional interaction and conversation, it's likely to bring quality people. And for those individuals that are in these organizations, if they're able to lean into those interests of those individuals and connect those two things together, you're likely to have a much better environment for what we want to bring to FSL. So, and the second thing is accountability. And this is, I'm not talking about at the IFC level or even at the professional level. I'm talking very micro. As one of the podcasts actually said, is calling in. That is a very noble act. Is if we're able to do that, then students are actually going to see this is not acceptable, exhibiting some of those things. And if we don't hold our brothers and sisters accountable, eventually external constituents are going to enforce sanctions on actions that are not representative of our values and what our missions are trying to put together. So I think those two things are going to be what are going to allow us to remain and stay relevant in the coming years, because this doesn't look like it's getting any better at this point.
You're so right. I mean, on the recruitment side, what I'm seeing is organizations are basically just taking whatever people are coming to them. I see a certain sense of laziness in terms of going out and finding leaders on campus that are already doing a great job at showing leadership skills in other organizations on campus. So I think that definitely needs to change. And you're right about the accountability piece. That is probably one of the biggest issues that I see, is that brothers and sisters are not able to hold their fraternity brothers and sorority sisters accountable to the values that they committed to when they joined the organization. That's why I recently started talking about judicial boards, for example, to try and get that accountability piece there. Without it, you're absolutely right. That's when we start seeing all kinds of problems on college campuses, and we're going to have to remain vigilant. I think that most students are joining fraternities and sororities typically for social reasons today, and so we're going to have to remain vigilant, I think, over the foreseeable future, to make sure that we're getting quality candidates into our organizations.
I think, too, one thing that I would definitely recommend for every student leader, regardless if it's FSL or student government, is reading T.J. Sullivan's Motivating the Middle.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I didn't read until after I graduated college, and I am kicking myself every day for it, because it's even helpful when supervising as also. So if our student leaders at the top third are able to motivate those middle people, then it's likely that those bottom third are going to be essentially non-existent or not even relevant at all.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like that's every person in an organization needs to read that.
Yeah, I love that book. TJ is a good friend of mine, and a really good exercise that you can do using some of the things that you'll learn by reading Motivating the Middle is get your chapter together. I'm sure hopefully you're meeting once a week, and have the chapter members self-assign themselves, okay? They're going to basically decide on their own which one of those groups they belong into. Is it the top third of the chapter? Is it the middle third or the bottom third? And let them self-select where they're going to go. And just sit back and watch. Now, probably your exec board is probably going to be in the top third. These are the people that are doing most of the work in your chapter. Then there's going to be some people that are in the middle, and then there are going to be the people on the bottom third that typically will only come to social events, probably have pretty bad grades, probably don't show up for anything other than the parties, right? And so it is interesting to have a conversation with all of these people in their groups and try and, number one, assess who are the middle members. So that way in your mind, you can figure out, okay, I need to spend more time with this person and figure out why are they a middle member? Is it because they're having a challenging financial situation? And maybe as a leader, I can bring them to financial aid and get that situation resolved. Is it that they're having a challenging academic issue? Okay, so maybe we can get this person a tutor in calculus, and then we can resolve that issue, and then they're going to be a top third member. So identifying who they are is the first thing. And then the second thing is, what is that follow-up? What do we need to do to get this person to be a top third member? With that bottom third, there's really not a lot you can do with that. Unfortunately, people are always asking, for the silver bullet. What can we do with these bottom third members that only come to social events? But other than that, they don't come to meetings. They don't come to our philanthropy. They don't do fundraising. They don't do anything. And I think, really in looking at those members, I think we have to really kind of look at what are we doing in terms of recruitment? How did this person get into the organization? And how can we change our recruitment techniques going forward? So that way we can ensure that this person is a good fit with the values of our organization. Because the members who are in the bottom third, these are probably people that were not vetted very well, and they probably don't share our values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and lastly, a part of the accountability piece is do whatever you can to preserve those values and your mission. And sometimes that's having a hard conversation with those folks and say, hey, maybe we're not the best fit. Maybe it's time for us to part ways.
Yeah.
And I know that's a tough conversation to have, but it's definitely something that will help those leaders develop those communication skills.
Yeah, that is a really tough conversation to have. I don't envy anybody in that situation, but I think for the good of the organization and also for the good of this person, they should know that this is obviously an issue that's contrary to the values of the organization. We should give them some kind of an opportunity, I think, to try and make amends. But if it's demonstrated that clearly this is not a good fit, I think it's probably best for everybody that this person would step aside. But yeah, definitely difficult conversations to have, no question about it. So you obviously, a lot now, I think, that you didn't know as an undergraduate. Certainly recently you just got your master's degree in higher education. Congratulations, by the way, on that. Knowing everything that you know now, which is a great deal, is there any piece of advice that you would give yourself if you could go back in time and have a conversation with Corbin as an undergraduate?
Knowing a great deal, you are definitely giving me a lot of credit there. But I think the things that I'm going to say are things that I'm working through right now as well. And I recognize that is, it's okay to say no. It's okay to not have to do everything under the sun. It's okay to work on things that are typically just hangout time, taking care of yourself. That's definitely something that I needed, especially with all of the leadership roles that I was in, plus taking 18 hours my senior year. That was not a great time, but I got through it with the help of the folks around me. But definitely it's okay to say no. And I think the second thing, and this is something probably the bigger of the two that I'm struggling with now, is taking time for myself and finding hobbies outside of work and outside of reading and whatever else. And things that don't take generally a lot of time. I mean, going outside and really just taking in the air, watching people walk past and watching cars past and things of like that nature. And I think those are probably the two things that I would go back and say, Corbin, it's okay to stop and observe rather than do.
Right. I love that. And I think the first piece is also really important, learning how to say no. For people like you and I that want to get involved in just about everything, the temptation's there to always say yes. I know that you were very much like I was as an undergraduate, where you feel like you have to do everything. Otherwise, if you give it to somebody else, maybe they won't do as good a job. And now it's your organization's name that is now going to be tarnished because they're just not doing as good a job. So you feel like you have to take everything on. And obviously that's not, a really good way of going about things. Learning how to delegate things to other people, I think is important, but also learning to say no. Warren Buffett, that's one of his quotes. He basically says that the difference between a successful person and a very successful person is the person who's very successful has learned how to say no.
Absolutely.
And it's true. I mean, if you look at Warren Buffett's schedule, he only has like 2 things scheduled a week. And I'm sure a lot of people come to him for all kinds of things. It could be, who knows what they're asking Warren Buffett for. I'm sure a million things. But
yeah.
I'm sure, but he's recognized that, time is his most precious commodity. And I think, we really have to focus in on that. We have to focus in on self-care, which is kind of like where you were going with the second point. I think all of those things are really important, and just finding other interests. It's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And so we're going to have to find other things in life that are going to occupy our time, that are going to challenge us physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. So I think that's wonderful advice that you gave there. So cool. So of course, here at Fraternity Foodie, we absolutely love food. That comes as no surprise to you. So what is your favorite meal, and where can we go to get that?
So I love Mexican food, being the Texan that I am. It doesn't matter whether it's Tex-Mex or authentic Mexican food. If you put a tostada or a taco in front of me, I'm ready to go. I'll eat it with some salsa and enjoy every second of it. But there's a place out in Terlingua, Texas. It's really out in the middle of nowhere. It's by the name of Tivo's, and they have the best chicken tacos on the planet. The homemade corn tortillas, homemade flour tortillas, fresh vegetables. They have it all, and it is the best groceries that you'll have in your entire life. So definitely, if you're ever out in West Texas, close to Big Bend State and National Park, it is worth your time to stop at Tivo's.
All right. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. And I'm also looking forward to, I know we're going to be paying a visit over to Chris and John in Dallas, Texas pretty soon. So I'm looking forward to checking out their faux burrito. I think that's going to be really fun. And maybe on a future episode, we can give a whole synopsis of what that meal consisted of and what we thought, give our review.
Absolutely. That would be a big time.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, listen, I also, if anybody in our audience, if they want to connect with you going forward, where can they connect with you, on social media or elsewhere?
So I'm not on social media a ton, but if folks want to get in contact or connect with me, I'm at Corbin L. Franklin on Twitter, and then on LinkedIn, I'm just Corbin Franklin.
Beautiful. Perfect. So Corbin, listen, you were so supportive of the work that I was doing with Sigma Pi. And I think you really believed in the vision that I was trying to create with the help of a lot of really talented people at the headquarters. So I certainly appreciate all of that support. And I think a lot of the conversations that we had that day at Southern Arkansas certainly helped to shape what Greek University looks like today. So I want to let you know that those conversations that meant a great deal to me back then, it also means a great deal to me today. So thank you for all of that. Congratulations on all of your success on the master's degree. And we certainly loved having you here.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, if once you're doing things right, it's kind of easy to say those nice things. So thanks for allowing me to be a part of the journey.
You got it. All right. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on an upcoming edition of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.